Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Cory.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Cory. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/rewatchpodcast.
Thanks, everyone. The Rewatch Podcast presents the Police Academy Film Series Rewatch. Join us each week as we go from the Academy to Miami to Moscow and revisit every film in the Police Academy franchise. Send your feedback to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or follow us on Twitter @rewatchpod. Today we're discussing Police Academy, starring Steve Guttenberg, Kim Cattrall, Michael Winslow, G.W. Bailey, Bubba Smith, Donovan Scott, George Gaines, Andrew Rubin, David Graff, Leslie Easterbrook, Bruce Mailer, Deborah Lee Scott, and Ted Ross. Directed by Hugh Wilson. Welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast. I'm Cory, so tell me, do you and the wife do a doggy style or what?
And this is Nathan. And move it, move it, move it. Oh, hello, Cory.
Hey, mate, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
So excited to be back here discussing Police Academy.
I know. It's nice for us to move away from science fiction.
Yes.
And getting into some comedy.
Yes. I mean, we threw out the special bonus episode for Galaxy Quest and ended up dedicating it to the late, great Alan Rickman, of course.
That was like, that was actually a bit of a shock when that happened. I didn't expect that at all. I had no idea that he was unwell.
No, not at all. So it was great to sort of be able to get that episode out and dedicate it to his memory. But at the same time, it sort of helped us transition into discussing a comedy film, since here we are discussing 7 comedy films. Just
quickly though, I don't want to be too morbid, but between Alan Rickman and David Bowie in the last week, it's been full on, like in terms of people that I've been watching for years and years and years and really admired and enjoyed the way they wrote music and acted and the movies they were in. It's been a really full on week.
It really has. It really has. Very sad indeed.
Anyway, but you are right though. We're here to kind of get into some comedy, some light affairs to what we're usually used to.
Yes. Well, it's funny because some people may ask, why are we discussing Police Academy films? And, for those people who listen to the Star Trek rewatch, you probably caught on that Nathan and I used to work together.
Yes.
In the film industry. And I remember coming back to work one day after it was a long weekend. We had a public holiday or something. And you came up to me and you said, what did you do for the long weekend? I said, I did nothing. I stayed inside and watched all 7 Police Academy movies just because I have them and I had nothing to do. So when we were talking about series that we could get into, as we move forward here at the Rewatch Podcast, you said, hey, man, do you want to discuss the Police Academy movies? And I'm like, yes, let's do that.
I think it's a good idea, though, because, there's some good films in it. I mean, I'm not expecting all 7 to be rock solid gold, but, I've got memories of these movies, of watching them, back in the 80s and 90s and growing up in them. And I remember they were fun films for the day, and they were popular for a reason, because they were pretty good.
Well, before we get into it all, let's check out the trailer, hey?
Yes.
Crime. The city was full of it.
Hey! Free TV!
Desperate measures were needed.
Want you to go to the Police Academy.
The Police Academy is such a dangerous place.
Honey, don't worry.
Desperate measures were taken.
I'm joining the police force! Ah!
The mayor says we have to take this riffraff.
I'm trapped here?
Oh, yes. We all are.
What about guns? When do we get guns?
You will be schooled in firearms, police procedures, local laws, and many, many other things.
High-speed driving. And self-defense.
I need a volunteer.
That's me. I love it.
Police Academy.
Where did you get this gun?
My mom gave it to me.
Mister, I am warning you, hot tower!
They're lean, mean,
Does the radio bother you? 5.
I can turn it down.
obscene. Each and every one of them striving to defend
You make me sick.
Thank you, sir. I make everybody sick. See the thighs.
or upend.
Come on. I haven't got all day. The thighs.
And now that they're ready for the real world, crime is no longer the #1 problem. They are.
Can you get my kitty cat out of the tree?
No problem, ma'am.
Police Academy.
Yeah, let's get into some trivia here about Police Academy.
Exactly. All right. So, Police Academy was released on March 23rd, 1984, on a budget of $4.5 million. Its worldwide box office actually tallied $146 million. So it was a big hit, wasn't it?
It was. Actually, over on another podcast that I host, Triplecast, we're currently talking about cult classics from 1984. And this is actually a well-known fact. 1984 is a big year for movies. So many movies, so many great movies came out in 1984. And we got a bit of a list here of what Police Academy was up against when it first came out, because it came out in the #1 spot on its release day in 1,587 US theaters. And it was up against, check this list, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Romancing the Stone, Splash, Bachelor Party, which was also a screenplay by the writers of Police Academy, Neil Israel and Pat Proft. The Gods Must Be Crazy, Cannonball Run 2, Moscow on the Hudson, 16 Candles, and Rhinestone. I mean, that's a huge list, and that's just a small portion of some of the great films that came out in 1984.
Yeah, so despite all of the fierce kind of competition that Police Academy came up against, it would actually go on to take in a final total of $81.2 million domestically, and becoming the 6th highest grossing film of 1984. The film was also a big success, as I said before, going on to $146 million worldwide. So if you were a producer on this film, you would have been very pleased with how it turned out.
It makes sense now why there ended up being 7 of these, because this first one was just wildly successful. They just kept pumping them out until the well ran dry.
It's not too dissimilar to kind of what they were doing with the Saw films and all that kind of stuff. And I don't mean to compare the two, but I do compare them from the perspective of it's like a sequel every year. Like as soon as one finished, another one would just instantly go into production. And sure enough, man, when Halloween rolled around the next year, the next Saw film would show up, and I'm assuming filming the same. The Police Academy franchise wasn't that different. They pumped out 4 or 5 of these in about a 5-year period, and I think they did the last one in 92 or 93, wasn't it? I haven't really kind of got that far, but they did 7 films in like 8 or 9 years. So they did not muck around at all with this franchise.
Yeah, and for the most part, they managed to retain a large majority of the cast. Of course, we lose people along the way. Some people leave and then come back. So, yeah, we'll find out as we go along. But, there's some people whose careers were made by this film. The big one, Michael Winslow. I mean, here in the trivia, we've got, in addition to playing Jones in the film, Michael Winslow also doubled as the voice for the public address announcements heard at the Academy, which I think is really funny because he often makes fake announcements to sort of get out of things. So the fact that the actual announcer is Michael Winslow is pretty funny.
But they've got some big names in this film. I mean, Steve Guttenberg, like as much as you might joke about him now, like he's still around, he still acts. He certainly doesn't act in like big budget fare like he kind of did back in the day. But Steve Guttenberg was a big star in the 80s. I mean, he not only starred in the Police Academy films, he starred in the 3 Men and a Baby franchise. He also did Cocoon. He also starred in Short Circuit, various other kind of films. I mean, none of those films are small films. They were big cinema. So he was quite a star back then.
Absolutely. It's funny here because also here in the trivia, Bruce Willis auditioned for the role of Mahoney. Didn't get it. Lost it to Steve Guttenberg.
Yeah. Now, and do you remember how last week in Galaxy Quest I came up with my Seinfeld reference? Do you remember how I was talking about how Brandon's mother was like, well, I'm going to do it again for Police Academy. For Police Academy, the guy that played Cadet Douglas Fackler, who is played by a guy named Bruce Marler. Now, do you remember, it was the gag at the start of the film when he leaves the house and his wife is kind of on top of the car. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was him. He played the rabbi in Seinfeld who can't keep a secret and keeps blabbing about George and Susan and all that kind of stuff. It's a guy
random.
Yeah, I know. It's totally random. So, yeah, I think I might try and keep my Seinfeld references going for the next few weeks. I might find it my job to do this at this stage.
Yeah, all these comedians that came out of the 80s at some point ended up doing Seinfeld or something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But it's also got Bubba Smith in it as well, playing Cadet Moses Hightower. Now, he's obviously came from an American football background. He actually won a Super Bowl in Super Bowl V. He played for 3 or 4 teams that had quite a long, distinguished kind of career playing American football. He's actually recounted that the Police Academy films made him a lot more famous than it totally destroyed his football career not in terms of like the legacy that he kind of left, but in terms of what he was actually kind of known for, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, honestly, I had no idea he was a football player. I was just assumed this was his claim to fame, was doing the Police Academy movies.
Yeah, he was quite a distinguished football player, not no one at all. Like, he was a really, really quality player. So obviously he was trying to like step out of that vibe a little bit, if you know what I mean, and kind of spread his wings a bit. But I can't imagine even he would have expected Police Academy to kind of go on to kind of what it did.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have the director Hugh Wilson here. He actually makes a cameo in this film, and it wasn't really that he wanted to do a cameo. It's the scene where Bubba Smith, or Hightower, is learning to drive. Kerry Mahoney's teaching him how to drive, and he smashes into the other car, and the driver gets out and has a go at him, suddenly realizing like how big this dude is. That is Hugh Wilson.
Is that Hugh? I actually didn't realize that, actually.
Yeah, and it turns out that the person who was supposed to play the role of the angry driver had actually gotten drunk and passed out, because that shot was filmed at 4:30 in the morning. Out on an empty street. Yeah. So the person they had hired or cast in that role had gotten himself drunk, passed out in the trailer. So Hugh Wilson was like, to hell with it, I'll just do it.
Oh, my Lord.
We need to get this shot now before the sun comes up. So
wow.
That's pretty funny.
Well, that's hilarious, actually. That's great. Apparently, the term tackleberry has become a standard in the private security industry to denote an officer who's inordinately fond of firearms and other high-tech equipment. So I think the actor's name is David Graff. So his tackleberry kind of left a bit of a lasting legacy on the security industry, which I do find amusing.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a great role. It's a hilarious character. So
it is quite good, isn't it? Like the whole thing is great.
We also have here with Tackleberry's line, "Drop that stereo before I blow your goddamn nuts off, asshole."
Yeah.
Is actually the only time that his character swears in the entire film series. He never swears again.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
his character actually has like a full arc as the series goes on.
Okay, all right. I look forward to kind of getting into it.
Yeah.
Apparently, Paul Maslansky got the idea for Police Academy during the production of The Right Stuff. A group of police cadets actually arrived to help with crowd control for the filming of a street scene. And when the cadets piled out of the buses to take their posts, they were diverse: men, women, tall, short, black, Chinese. Maslansky found it humorous, asking the sergeant, "Are these all going to be future San Francisco's finest?" And the sergeant looked at Paul and said that due to an equal opportunity recruitment policy, we've got to take them all into the academy, but we can flunk them out. It started Maslansky thinking, what if they don't want to be flunked out? What if some guy or girl wants to stay in? That night, Paul wrote a 2-page treatment and gave it to the lad company, who loved the idea and agreed to develop the movie.
I think a lot of people forget that opening of the film about, how anybody can actually get into the police academy. It's whether or not you can make it into the police force. Like, that is the plot of this film. So.
It actually starts with like a voiceover, doesn't it? Isn't there like a little bit of a voiceover where it kind of gives everyone like, and the movie doesn't muck around at all. It starts really quickly.
Yeah. It's actually it's text on the screen, sort of filling in the blanks as opposed to narration. So, yeah.
Now, also, before we get stuck into what we thought of the film, the director of this guy, as we mentioned before, is a guy named Hugh Wilson. He went on to direct several films in the 90s, but hasn't really done too much. In the 2000s, he went to go and do The First Wives Club. Wasn't Bette Midler and Diane Keaton in that? Isn't that their film? Also, Blast from the Past, which was the Mummy guy, Brendan
Fraser.
Yeah, and Alicia Silverstone. Dudley Do-Right, Guarding Tess with apparently Guarding Tess is actually pretty good. Actually, that's the one with Shirley MacLaine and Nicolas Cage. I remember reading about that one a few years ago, saying it's actually quite good.
Yeah, interesting. So. He's done some, it's nothing to stick your nose up at. He's made some funny movies.
Oh, definitely. He's definitely stayed in like a genre of films, though. I wouldn't necessarily say that he's kind of spread his wings too far from the well. It's not like he's made like a serious horror film or anything like that.
Yeah, nothing like you would look back and go, wow, what a true auteur director.
Yeah. It's not like Alejandro Inarritu making The Revenant, like a Birdman and then The Revenant and it's just, anyway, just like those are very serious films. Hugh Wilson does not specialize in really serious films, does he?
Yeah, he couldn't do like what Tarantino did with The Hateful Eight, like the 8th film from Quentin Tarantino. You're like, oh man, I have to see it.
Shot in 70mm, and could you imagine that the 8th film by Hugh Wilson, shot in 70mm with a roadshow print and an intermission and an overture, and
the 8th film in the Police Academy series.
Yeah, that's exactly
70mm.
Oh man, oh well, if only. Anyway, so I think that's about it for our trivia today, man.
All right, well, let's get into our discussion.
Definitely.
Okay, so as we mentioned, the film opens up with text on a screen, which I don't think always denotes a good film. Like, text on a screen isn't always a good thing.
No, you're right. And one thing I will say about the start of this film, and as I said it before, it doesn't stuff around. It does feel a little rushed. The start of the film, like, it doesn't muck around at all. Like, within 3 minutes, you get the gist of what's happening pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah, and I think the text just sort of gives you context of what they're going for, really. And what it is that, this is the mid-'80s now, and, a lot of freedoms have come around. This unnamed city, somewhere in the United States, has a lady mayor. They have elected a female into the mayor's position. And her first act as mayor was to say, you know what? Anybody can be a policeman. The police academy needs to take everybody. And that kind of just sets you up for what they're going for, because the idea is that, all these undesirables are going to come into the police academy. It's not just, the physically fit and all that anymore. It's anybody can come in.
Look at that. Just look at that. Look at that scum. When I went through this academy, every cadet was the right weight, the right height, the right color, and they all had Johnson's, Lassard. Every single one of them.
Johnson's?
You know.
Oh, yes.
Back in the old days, there were Johnson's as far as the eye could see.
And what a lovely sight it was.
Have you seen these applications? Have you seen what our new Lady Mayor has brought us? Do you know that she is attempting to dismantle one of this country's great institutions of law and order? What do you say to that, Lassard?
The bitch.
Commandant?
Yes, Chief.
The mayor says we've got to take this flotsam. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have to put them on the force. Do you get my drift? Weed the undesirables out. Get rid of them.
No problem, Chief. We'll start washing them out this morning.
We don't throw them out. They must be encouraged to quit on their own. Do you understand?
I think I understand, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant Harris. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And clearly, people aren't that happy about these new changes, because you're right. It's kind of every kind of walk of life. Before that, you had your very strict kind of requirements for what was a police officer. So all of a sudden, they're taking, like people like Hicks and whatnot. Is it Lieutenant Hicks? Is that the woman that has a really quiet voice?
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice. It's like equal opportunity all of a sudden, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the thing that it sticks out like a sore thumb now, because I think the movie is about equal opportunity, but the casual racism and the casual homophobia in this movie is just rampant throughout, and I think it's there intentionally, because it is a film about equal opportunity. It's a force for change. Suddenly white people and black people are equal, men and women. It's all this coming together. So the use of casual racism and stuff like that, and then sort of throwing it back in your face.
Also, too, casual kind of sexism as well. I mean, when you actually think about the female characters in this movie, I mean, you've got Kim Cattrall, who basically plays Steve Guttenberg's kind of love interest. She's probably the strongest female character in the film. And then you've got Lieutenant Callahan, who is the, Harris's kind of offsider that is just all boobs and kind of, everybody wants a piece of kind of thing, if you know what I mean. And then you've got Lieutenant Hicks, who's like the strong kind of black woman, but she's she's got a voice like a mouse kind of thing, and nobody really takes her seriously, do they?
They even call out early, when they're all coming in, and there's the two cadet leaders. They get named the cadet leaders, Copeland and
that's it. Yeah. Copeland and Blanks.
Yeah. And Copeland looks around and he goes, "Man, there's a lot of spades around here." And then of course he's immediately confronted by Hightower.
Yeah, that's right.
And he has to be like, which is good. Yeah, that's real good for the police force,
Oh my God, you're right. It's just full on kind of casual racism everywhere. And I mean, we'll get to it in a bit more thoroughly. But seeing that we're on topic right now, we'll talk about it. But like, there's that scene later in the film as well with when Hightower goes nuts a little bit, all because Lieutenant Hicks drives over. I think it's Copeland's feet.
Yeah.
And he actually says like a really racist slur, like a really bad slur towards African Americans, and Hightower really loses it, doesn't he?
Yeah, and that's what gets him kicked out.
Well, and like for all this movie's kind of comedy, and it's a comedy 95% of the time, but that one scene there, that's a very serious scene, and that's like Hightower kind of saying to the world that he's not going to tolerate this, like under any circumstances, and he puts his job on the line to stick up for his colleague.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. I think that's what separates this first one from the rest of them, because it's comedy a lot of the time, but they've got something to say here.
Yeah,
and it is about confronting racism, sexism, homophobia, all that stuff. You know, it is actually saying something. And I think as we go along, that's going to drop away, and it's just going to be straight, you know, cop comedy kind of material. But really, I guess we'll just wait and see as we get into the rest of them. But this movie's at least striving for something, which is a good thing. Yeah. But, you know, the opening of this is great because, yeah, we get that opening text, but, you know, we get into the setup of, you know, some of the main characters here, starting with Tackleberry, who is this, like, overzealous security guard. And immediately, like, usually I just watch these for the laughs. You know, they're pretty funny. But this time watching it, you know, knowing that I'm going to come on a podcast and talk about it, I realized that it's actually really well shot.
Yes.
You know, like the set design and everything. It's raining outside in this empty building, you know, whatever it is they're doing there. It's dark because nobody's around. And just, you know, there's this shot out the window and all, you know, all the water's pouring down because it's raining outside. It's just, it looks really gorgeous, actually.
Yeah, it's a really well shot, well made film. And you know, like anything, the material can be great, but you're still going to make a good movie, if you know what I mean. Like, it is possible to make a great script look really bad.
Yeah.
And I think they go a long way to actually making this like a really well-made piece of cinema that has lasted decade after decade. Like, people are still watching this movie today in 2016, and this film was made in 1984. You know, it's 32 years ago, this film.
Yeah, it's strange to think, isn't it?
It is. It's crazy. But you are right, man. We meet Tackleberry, who is a gun-obsessed adrenaline junkie who was an ex-security guard. And you also meet Leslie Barbara. I actually quite like this character. I think he makes me laugh a little bit. He's like an overweight, cowardly man that is clearly like a bit of a mama's boy. And his mum really, really loves him, doesn't he? Like, really loves him.
Yeah, it's funny the fact that, like, his full name, like both of his names, first and last name, are both female names.
Yes, yeah, I know.
Just to really drive home that he's a girly man.
Yeah. But you've got every kind of. I'm reluctant to use the word stereotype, but it does kind of come across a little bit like that, doesn't it? You got you know how last week we were talking about fish out of water stories with Galaxy Quest and you know this group of actors that are thrown into this situation that they're kind of unprepared for. Well, this is exactly not exactly the same, but certainly a very similar idea of these people that are kind of doing a job that perhaps they shouldn't be doing, and society is telling them that they shouldn't be doing. But it's a bit of a screw you to the government a bit too. It's like, no, screw you, man. We can do this. Like, it doesn't matter how I look or what I think inside. I can do this job. You know what I mean? Just give me a chance. That's all it's really saying, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you get all these people, Tackleberry, Leslie Barbara, there's the Kim Cattrall character. She wants to do it because I'm a woman and I want to prove that a woman can be a police officer as well. You know, she's also rich.
That's what I was going to say. I also kind of suspect Kim Cattrall is doing this as a bit of a rebellious kind of activity against her parents, possibly because there's that scene where they're driving to the academy and her mum actually, or you think it's her mum anyway, her mum actually says to her, she said, you could be doing so many jobs, but you choose this, and she really clearly looks down on it, doesn't she?
Exactly. So, yeah, you're getting the setup of all these people, and they're choosing to do this. You know, they are the misfits of society, and they are choosing to go into the police force because now they're allowed to pursue that. On the other hand, you get Mahoney, who is, I guess, really the main character of this story. It's Mahoney, and he's actually forced into this. He is the true fish out of water here.
Yeah, because he is like, you know, he's described as an easygoing man who has repeatedly got himself in trouble with the law when standing up to arrogance. Mahoney's actually forced to join the police force as an alternative to jail, because doesn't he get into trouble like the first time we meet Mahoney, isn't he some like car park attendant, and doesn't some guy kind of show up to the booth and for whatever reason they get into a bit of a slight disagreement, and that's right, he says the car park's full, doesn't he? But the guy with the car just doesn't want to take that, does he?
Yeah, he gives Mahoney some shit. So it turns out that Mahoney's boss is just like, just park the car. You know, this guy, I guess he's supposed to be a rich douchebag, really. And so Mahoney props it up on two wheels and then Gets it between two cars, and oh, yeah, what an idiot I am. It does fit.
But it is true. Like I think Steve Guttenberg is a really good choice for this role because he fits it like a glove. He plays it from he's a troublemaker at heart, isn't he? Absolutely. But you like him. He's a likable guy. Like you want to see him win.
Yeah, he's not the best looking guy in the world. Like I never really looked at Steve Guttenberg and thought, wow, what a sex symbol. Steve Guttenberg is. Not at all, right? But later in the movie, they get some shots of him when he has no shirt on, and the dude is like buff.
Yeah,
he's
pretty cut for this role, isn't he? I actually just watched a making of on the Blu-ray. There's a 30-minute making of the original Police Academy, with interviews with all the kind of main players, and he was actually recounting the make-out scene with Kim Cattrall, and you could he's just like, oh yeah, that took weeks to film with. Like we kept making mistakes. Like you could tell that he was just being really cheeky, But the reason why he ends up going to jail because he gets arrested for this stunt in the car park, and he shows up and he meets this guy named Captain Reed. Now it's clear that Captain Reed and Mahoney have a history together, don't they?
Yeah, I think Reed says that Mahoney's father was on the force at some point and had maybe he died, I guess maybe while on the job or something like that. So, out of respect for his father, he's often helped Mahoney out of these, scrapes with the law that he's gotten into. But this time he's like, look, I can't do it anymore. So you're either going to go to jail or you're going to join the police academy because you know what? The police academy's taking anyone, even a scumbag like you.
Yeah, that's right. Because he makes the choice, doesn't he? He makes the choice to kind of go, enough. Like, this can't continue. You need to change your life.
While he was there too, he also runs into this guy, Jones, played by Michael Winslow. And it's not really clear why Jones was arrested. He kind of just, he does his thing where he makes, noises with his mouth. And it sounds like a shotgun. Or an automatic rifle or something going off, scaring everybody. And I guess he's also kind of like Mahoney, is that he gets into crazy hijinks that land him in jail for whatever reason. And Mahoney actually says, look, if I've got to do this, then I want to bring my friend. So that's how Jones ends up at the police academy as well.
And the big thing about this agreement is that Captain Reed states very clearly to Mahoney that he can't quit. Like if he quits, he's just going to go straight to jail, isn't he? And I think the only way he can get out is if they throw him out, which is most likely won't happen.
Exactly, because we get to the police academy, and we get introduced to the people who run the academy, I guess. And, you got the main one, Commandant Lassard, played by George Gaines. Brilliantly played by George Gaines.
But he plays it so relaxed, doesn't he? Like, he really makes a few, interesting choices as an actor when he plays him because he's so in the zone with Commandant Lassard, I should say. Like, it's hilarious. He's really funny.
The whole bit that sort of sets them up, the commissioner's there.
Yes.
And there's also Harris, who is G.W. Bailey. And Harris, he's the one who is, the one that, you're just not going to like him. Whereas Lassard is the one who just, he's kind of witless in a way. He just doesn't really know what's going on. He's kind of just saying things because he thinks that's what the commissioner wants to hear.
I actually think that Lieutenant Harris in this film is the key to this film and essentially the franchise being so popular and so successful because his role and character in this film is so dead on. It's so perfect and hilarious. A, it's hilarious. B, the actor plays him note perfect. And I really do believe that G.W. Bailey as Lieutenant Thaddeus Harris is truly one of the screen's great villains. He's this, you really don't like him, but he's hilarious at the same time. I think he's great. And if they got that role wrong or casted it incorrectly or the actor wasn't driving for it, I just don't think this film would have worked nearly as well as it does.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's so smarmy, and you really dislike him. But that means that he can do a lot of, physical comedy where bad things happen to him. And it is just so funny. And, he has some of the best lines in the movie as well. You know, just some of the more quotable lines.
Well, mate, my sign out and sign in are both G.W. Bailey lines, Lieutenant Harris's lines. You know,
that's a testament. That's a testament to how quotable he is.
But he really is like I think as far as actors are concerned in this film, I mean, obviously George Gaines he's been around forever, but G.W. Bailey, you could tell that he's been around the block more than a few times, and he really knew. You could see that he knows what he's doing.
So you know, we get into the whole thing. Immediately, you've got Mahoney. He wants to, of course, try to get himself kicked out because he can't quit. But, you know, the whole setup is that they don't actually want to kick anybody out. They don't want to make it appear that under this new law that they have to take everybody, that they are just going to dismiss people. So they need to encourage people to leave. So, you know, on the one hand, Mahoney wants to get kicked out, but on the other hand, the higher ups like Lassard and the commissioner don't actually want to do that. And it actually turns out as well that when Mahoney confronts Lassard about wanting to get out of there, Lassard says, well, I promised Captain Reed that I wouldn't throw you out no matter what you do.
Yeah.
You cannot leave. You know, you are stuck here for the... He says 24 weeks, but that's really funny because Lassard just is terrible with numbers.
Yes, that's right.
Can't remember anything. So
I think there's a line too there where Mahoney says to Lassard, he goes, "Does that mean I'm stuck here for good?" And he goes, "Yes, like we all are." You know what I mean?
No one's allowed in here.
Listen, I got a problem, Chief.
It's Commandant.
Commandant, I'm sorry. Is that your fish?
No, it belongs to a friend.
Very pretty.
What do you want?
I want out of here, right now.
Out of this office?
No, out of the academy.
Well, that's no problem. You can just quit.
I can't quit.
Of course you can. Many, many wonderful people have quit. Many, many.
Commandant, you know Captain Reed?
Oh, yes. Captain Reed. You're Mahoney. Mahoney. You're a special case. You can't quit.
I know that.
On the other hand, I can't throw you out.
Why not?
Because I promised Captain Reed. I promised I'd keep you here the full 24 weeks.
You what? You what? You told him. He told me that I could... I'm trapped here?
Well, yes. We all are.
Yeah, and he does some great stuff too. Like, he approaches Thompson, gets her phone number. You know, he pretends to be an instructor. Gets her phone number, tells her he wants to check out her thighs.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
He's just giving Harris shit all the time, which is brilliant.
I know, like, clearly doesn't like authority even slightly. And the comedy that Harris and that pull off is hilarious. Like, it's really great.
Yeah, he sends Leslie Barbara. This is actually really weird because he says, you know, whose house is that over there? And he says, oh, well, that's where the commandant and his wife live.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think. I'm not sure. You would assume it's supposed to be Lassard's wife. He's the commandant, but they never bring up a wife for Commandant Lassard.
Well, I actually,
any of the other movies.
I actually read a bit of trivia that this is the only time it ever gets mentioned or you ever see her in all 7 films for Commandant Lassard. So you're right. So, but I mean, Mahoney, he's such a pain in the ass, isn't he? And like, he's actually like, I'm not too sure. At the start of the film, his character is quite mischievous and he's really not very nice to most people. But he kind of changes as the show kind of goes on a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, because he really bears the brunt of the training. You know, they go through it all that, you know, usual stuff that a police officer would learn, self-defense, target practice with the guns and stuff like that. But throughout all this, you see Mahoney, he's getting extra runs in and stuff like that. You know, he has to go and do push-ups and, you know, he's always bearing the brunt of discipline because of, you know, all these antics he's getting himself into.
There's a great scene actually, which is hilarious. It's about halfway through the movie when Mahoney's kind of staring at the women's locker room and they're all nude and doing whatever it is they do. And
typical 80s film, you got to get some TNA in there.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And he's sitting there drinking a beer, and then Captain Harris catches him, doesn't he? and he gets told to go away really quickly, and it's a great gag actually, because like within like 2 seconds of Mahoney leaving and Harris standing, and Harris actually looks down and has a bit of a look himself, and don't the girls notice like immediately?
It is a really random gag, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do love it. Like they never notice Mahoney just casually looking in there, but as soon as Harris looks in with a beer in his hand, they freak out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's almost as if to say like they did see Mahoney up there and they just don't care.
Are the other films as racy as this, or is this? Because I was surprised at the amount of nudity in this film. I was expecting like a PG kind of comedy, and like it is a PG comedy to a point. Because I remember watching this when I would have been 8 or 9 when I watched this for sure. Like I was young. Yeah, I was surprised at how much nudity there was.
Yeah, it's like I said, I think it's that typical 80s thing where you just throw in a bit of TNA. It's nothing gratuitous, but it does give that younger audience, because I was definitely should have been watching this at the age I was when I first watched it.
Yeah.
But it sort of gives you that thrill of like, ooh, boobies.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Watching it.
Another two people that I thought they got right as well as far as casting is concerned is the roles of Harris's right-hand men, Copeland and Blanks. I actually thought they were pretty good, because you really didn't like them, did you? Like, you really didn't like them. They were bastards to almost everyone around them, weren't they?
They did have a good introduction, because they sort of get introduced along the lines with George Martin.
Yes, yeah. I was going to mention George, and his great entrance when he shows up in his car and he's surrounded by like 5 or 6 women, and he gets out of the car and he gives them all a kiss on the cheek. And isn't there like a running gag throughout the whole film where he's always showing up at the women's kind of dormitory and he's just like sleeping with all the girls?
Yeah, he would dress up like a woman so he could sneak in there and then get with all the women. But he, along with Copeland and Blanks, gets sent to the barber by Harris.
Yeah, that's right.
And Copeland and Blanks come in and they sort of have a go at George and tell him to wear first, asshole, take it all off. And then after they're done, George is just like, oh, just take a bit off the sides. You can do that? Yeah, this isn't the army.
Of course you can. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
From the get-go, they just set up as total douchebags.
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of hard talking about this film in terms of plot, because let's be honest for a second, 3/4 of the film is all about establishing the relationships between all the characters and actually getting to know who they are as people. And most of it's just like gags along the way as well, too, isn't there? Like,
exactly.
I mean, you've got that gag as well where Leslie Barbara gets cornered by Copeland and Blanks, because Lieutenant Harris tells Copeland and Blanks to find out about the party that's happening. And Copeland and Blanks talks to Leslie Barbara and says, where's the party, man? You got to tell us where the party is. And he doesn't know. And he goes, well, you better find out. So Leslie Barbara goes to Mahoney, doesn't he? And actually says, where's the party at? And he goes, oh, yeah, of course there's a party. Are you going to come? And he goes, no. I've got to go back to my parents' house or do something like that. And he goes, well, why do you want to know? And he goes, oh, because I just do. And he goes, because people want to know. And then Mahoney kind of catches on, and he actually sends Leslie Barbara on a bit of a false chase, doesn't he? He actually says, yeah, it's at this bar called the Blue Oyster Bar.
It is a good gag. Because he knows, Mahoney's onto it straight away. He's just like, yeah, I know what's going on here.
Exactly.
And of course, it's a gay bar, yeah.
And then
it's even more than a gay bar. It's like a bear bar, strapped men.
That's exactly right. It's not just a gay bar. It's not like a gay bar with disco music on in the background. It's a hard drinking leather gay bar,
Yeah, where all the bears just want to waltz with you. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. So you got this great gag where Copeland and Blanks show up there, and before you know it, they end up having like a night out at the Blue Oyster Bar, and they end up dancing with these two guys, don't they? It's actually pretty funny.
It is great.
And didn't they kind of do a homage to that in Arrested Development with Tobias? Didn't he show up at some bar or something like that? That was am I thinking the right thing?
Yeah, you are. And this isn't the last time we're going to get this gag in a Police Academy film, if I remember. They do go back to this Blue Oyster Bar gag again later. Even some of the more subtle gags with Copeland and Blanks are pretty funny. You know, like when they confront Leslie about finding out where the party is. And Blanks says, oh, you know, well, maybe we should just pick up Mr. Barbara's books and throw them out the window. So Copeland like packs them all up, throws them at the window, but it's closed. It's really random. It's so funny.
But even like little things too, like when Harris is talking towards the cadets and Mahoney puts the megaphone in like ink or something like that. So when Harris puts it up to his mouth, he's got like a ring around his face. Like it's really silly, but it's really funny and it works really well. And it's played for honesty and like Harris plays the role so well that you just can't help but kind of giggle a little bit.
Yeah, and of course later they've got to go out with an officer into the field, and Harris, by some miraculous means, ends up getting his head stuck up a horse's ass.
Oh my lord, yes. I forgot about that. And when I was watching it the other day, I laughed at it.
It really is just like the quietest scene, you know, the payoff to it is that he comes in and his hair's all slicked down and he approaches Mahoney and he says, you didn't tell anybody, right? And Mahoney's like, I swear I didn't tell anybody. And everybody is just trying not to laugh at him, including Callahan.
Yeah.
Who's his, like, you know, his right-hand man, as it were.
And doesn't Lavelle Jones? Yeah.
Yeah, Jones just makes this, like, and that's the payoff to the gag, you know. It's just really subtle, but it's really, really funny.
It's hilarious the way it's all set up. I will say one thing that who I thought was a little bit wasted in this film, because they actually didn't really give him a whole lot to do, is I didn't really think Lavelle Jones was really used in any other way. Like he wasn't driving the narrative at all, as far as I mean, all he was really there to do was to be Mahoney's mate and to do sound effects. That's really what his whole job was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is actually. You're right. As a character, nothing really happens for him, you know, considering he's the guy who Mahoney said, you know, if I'm going to do this, then I want my friend who has also been arrested to do this as well. He does nothing.
He does
really,
nothing.
Except make funny noises all the time.
Yeah. There's actually also a pretty good scene later on in the film with Hightower. Well, Hightower shows up at Mahoney's kind of bedroom and at like 2:30 in the morning or something like that, and he actually admits to him that he doesn't know how to drive, or he hasn't driven since he was 12. So doesn't Mahoney actually take him out for like a late night drive? And that's the scene where Hugh Wilson shows up.
Exactly, yeah. He takes him out. They steal Copeland's car, which I thought was fun.
That's right, yeah.
Again, just a little subtle joke if you're paying attention. Where the license plate should be on Copeland's car, it's the Confederate flag.
Yeah.
And of course, at the beginning of the movie, you know, he's making racial slurs, and you know, actually after the driving test, he does make a really big racial slur towards Hicks.
I can't remember what he exactly says, but it's quite offensive, isn't it?
Yeah. So just that little touch that his license plate is actually the Confederate flag. He's like, okay, so he's like a Southern racist now. But yeah, that is a great scene, you know. And of course, Hightower has to rip the front seats out so he can fit into this small car. And everything, yeah, it's pretty well done.
But yeah, I mean, as I said before about talking about the plot of this film, I mean, it's essentially, as I said, they're all getting to know each other. You're kind of getting to understand who these characters are, like their motivations. Essentially, for 2/3 of the film, Mahoney's trying to get himself kicked out by annoying absolutely everyone and just like offending them and just being a total kind of ass. And it's not really until later on in the film where he kind of truly kind of shows his colours a little bit, where it doesn't like a riot occur or something like that, like an actual real life riot where there's a part of the city that's like in total crisis, and they actually call for all police officers and cadets included to actually get down on the scene. And this is where the film kind of moves into like a completely different gear, doesn't it?
Yeah, he spent the whole movie trying to get kicked out. And he's pretty much like on the verge of getting kicked out. Like he's finally talked Harris into just being like, let's call up Reed. Let's get me out of here. And of course he looks over at Thompson and she flirts with him a bit. And he changes his mind. He decides he wants to stay at that point. But then Copeland and Blanks bring a prostitute into Leslie's room.
That's right. Yes. I forgot about that.
and Mahoney's the good guy. He tries to help Leslie out. So he tries to hide this prostitute who ends up giving a BJ to Commandant Lassard.
Doesn't just give him a BJ. She does it whilst he is kind of addressing a group of kind of, like officials that are kind of there visiting the site, and he's actually in the hallway and they're hiding in like a podium, aren't they? Gutenberg and the prostitute.
And George Gaines just sells that scene so freaking well, trying to give the speech.
Apparently George Gaines struggled a little bit with that scene where he said, look, I can see the humour in it, but it's bordering on vulgar, if you know what I mean. And he's right, it is. And Hugh Wilson actually admits to George, he goes, look, I think people will see it as both. I think it's hilarious, but they'll see it as vulgar. And he's right on. And it's like what I said to you before about the film being racier than I remember. Like, I don't, like, as much as I kind of watched this movie when I was a kid, I don't remember that scene at all. So when I watched that the other night, I totally, like, it was kind of a bit fresh to me. I didn't expect it. Did you?
Well, I've seen them recently, so I wasn't expecting it. But the whole thing is, too, that he thinks that Mahoney did that because Mahoney sticks his head out of the podium afterwards. So Commandant Lassard sort of just goes catatonic for a little while.
Well, again, and Commandant Lassard kind of gets his own at the end of the film too. There's a bit of he kind of gets even a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, I think they put that in so they could say, he came around to realizing that it wasn't Mahoney who did that to him.
That's exactly right.
It was a prostitute in there. So they needed to sort of pay that off so it's not weird between them later and as the movies go on. Because I'm assuming they, had planned to sort of keep it going forward. They didn't want to end the film with Lassard thinking that Mahoney had given him a BJ under the podium.
No.
That would just be really weird. So, yeah. So, even that, like, you think, oh, man, he's got to get thrown out now. But Lassard, like, doesn't actually want to tell anybody what Mahoney did.
No, he doesn't. And
he's trying to explain it to Harris and he's just like, oh, he did a bad thing.
Yeah, and doesn't he just keep going on about it? He goes, he did something terrible. And he can't say it out loud. He actually can't. It's really great. It's very funny.
It really just ends with him going, oh, it was nothing. And can I go now?
Doesn't Lieutenant Harris just think, like, Commandant Lassard's just a weirdo anyway?
Exactly. Like, he's just off the edge. Like, I don't need to listen to this guy.
Yeah, I've got bigger things to do.
Yeah. And then, of course, he gets in a fight with Copeland and Banks. They get him kicked out. Again, he was sticking up for Leslie Barbara, so, he was being the nice guy. But, yeah, then this riot breaks out, which was, it was a good setup as well. It was Fackler. He throws an apple out the window, hits a guy in the head. They turn around, and there just happens to be two other guys with a bag of apples. And then it's just, it's whole, domino effect. It leads to this giant riot. So all the cadets have to head out. And Mahoney, decides to sort of go incognito. Even though he's been kicked out, he's going to go along.
There's a pretty good scene on the bus, actually, when they're all in their riot gear. And Lieutenant Harris is kind of reading the riot act to all the cadets, saying, look, we're only going down there for traffic protocol and, traffic diversion or whatever it might be, and there'll be no kind of need to kind of release your firearm. And he makes a big point of yelling at Tackleberry on the bus and goes, and I'm talking to you, Tackleberry. Do you hear me? And he makes a really big point about it. It's really great.
But of course it was set up that Lassard never remembers numbers, so he sends them to like right where the riot is. So they kind of have to rise to the occasion, and that's the whole thing, Again, there was Hightower who was kicked out. He went back to his job as a florist.
That's hilarious.
I know. And he sort of comes in as well and helps out because Harris is taken hostage after this guy steals Copeland and Blanks' guns, so they're going to get their comeuppance later as well. Yeah. It's a great culmination of how all this stuff comes together, and of course Hightower and Mahoney come in and save the day. So they they end up on the police force, and they get commended for their efforts as well. So it's ended great for all our heroes, and it's ended pretty terribly for all the people we dislike.
Lieutenant Harris? Any last-minute tips or suggestions?
Nothing really comes to mind.
What's it gonna be? Throw your gun over the ledge. I got two little piglet wiggles.
Hey,
What do you want?
I want to watch you off these pigs.
Sure. Sure. What you want me to do first?
I believe I'd shoot this one.
Yeah, you.
Looks like cadet revolvers to me.
I know those guys.
Yeah, that's right, and that's kind of how the movie ends, and that's the last we kind of see of these characters until we get to the next film, which is Citizens on Patrol. Is that right? Is that the next one?
No, the next one is Their First Assignment.
Oh, okay. Which I'm excited about. I'm looking forward to kind of spending some time with these characters. It should be good.
And it actually ends with a really cool song too. I'd kind of like to get this song somewhere. This "I Want to Be Somebody" song that rolls over the credits as they're all doing their, police march and salute and all that stuff as they graduate. An interesting song, and not to take away, of course, from the Police Academy theme song, which is very iconic. Okay, so ratings, recommend, what do you think?
I'm going to give this a strong recommend. I think this is a really fun film. As I said, I watched the film the last couple of days, and I think it started a little bit slow for me. The first 10 minutes I wasn't too sure, but once I kind of got past that, I really kind of warmed up to the characters and to the humour that was kind of on display. It was a nice change from what I've kind of been watching recently, and if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a 7.5 high towers out of 10.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, no, I definitely give this a solid recommend. Like I said, this first one, at the very least, is trying to say something about society and all that stuff. So it's really interesting. It's funny. Everybody gets their things to do, even if some of the characters are a bit underdeveloped here in this first one, especially like Michael Winslow.
And again, you don't really get to know like Kim Cattrall's character very much, do you? I mean,
true.
She's like a feisty kind of cadet. That's all you really know about her, really.
And of course, this is the only one that she does. She's not coming back for any of the other ones. We do have a lot of recurring characters, but she's not.
Without jumping too far ahead, I read something the other day that I think Sharon Stone shows up in one of the police academies.
Yeah,
am I right?
We'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, I'm gonna give this 8.5 dancers over at the Blue Oyster Bar.
Nice one, man.
We just want to remind people that we always have feedback segments in all our discussions. So if you have any thoughts on any of the police academies as we go along, feel free to send them in. We're going to call this time. We're going to call our feedback segment the Citizens on Patrol. So. Yeah. You got something to say about any of the Police Academy films? Send it on over. We'd love to hear from you guys out there and include your thoughts.
Yeah, and if you get involved, it makes it more fun for everyone. And yeah, it's good. It's good fun to kind of do it too. So these are fun films. I'd be surprised if the people that weren't listening haven't seen most of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you've seen one and you liked it, then you've probably seen them all. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well. Shall we play a quick game of Who Said This?
I think we should.
Yeah, we did this on our last series. I think we're going to just keep it going. It's a lot of fun. We're going to give you a line from the movie, and if you think you know who said this, then hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Rewatch Quote. Hit us up on our Facebook page, all that stuff. I'm going to give out that info at the end of the show, but get involved if you think you know who said this. So give me a count in, hey?
3, 2, 1, scene.
Drop that stereo before I blow your goddamn nuts off, asshole.
Who said that? Who said it? Take a guess.
I wonder.
I wonder. It could only be about 5 people, couldn't it? Anyway.
I'm pretty sure we gave it away during our
I think we did.
Anyway, so.
I think we did, but it's always fun. So, yeah, I just like hearing you do the impersonations, mate. That's why we do this.
All right. So, like we mentioned, next week's episode is Police Academy 2, Their First Assignment. So, yes, so looking forward to delving deeper.
Get your tell us your thoughts on that film. We're keen for it.
Absolutely.
So that's it for this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by joining our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at RewatchPod and visit our webpage rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. It just helps people find the show a lot easier, lets people know how much you enjoy listening to us as well.
Also, too, if you enjoy the show and you like the Rewatch Podcast in general, you should follow Cory's other show on the Rewatch Podcast, where they're doing a discussion about the show Sliders.
Yes, the Sliders Rewatch. It's a lot of fun. Me and Tom over there.
Yeah, definitely. Get involved. You can find all those details at the Rewatch Podcast, podomatic.com.
Yes. And if you love the show that much, you can also help support us, help us keep the lights on around here by heading over to patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast. You can really help out the show by contributing as little as $1 per month. You know, you can choose how much per month you want to contribute, but it's as little as $1, and you could really just help us keep the lights on around here. You know, it's podcasting. As you get really into it, the more episodes you put out, you get hosting costs, bandwidth costs, all that kind of stuff. So if you really want to help us out, that's the best way to do it. That's patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast. So we thank you in advance for that.
Any contribution is appreciated. We really do appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me for this discussion, Nathan. I'm so happy to be getting into Police Academy. So this was a great discussion this time.
We've got 6 more, man. Better kind of, settle in. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a wild ride,
yes,
I'm sure.
It will.
All right. Well, until next time, I'll just say, I could show a movie on your butt, fatso.
And I want you two squad leaders to take Mr. Mahoney here and run him until he throws up.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended. The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in Title 17, aka Fair Use. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Copyright 2016, The Rewatch Podcast.